I suspect that most folks would agree that this world of ours is becoming more competitive on almost a daily basis. And in order to compete, there's a number of things you just have to do. And one of the most important is to listen. Good morning, I'm Walt Baker. The program is Eye on Idaho. And today you might say our eye is on our ear and its ability to listen and to really hear what's being said. Amazing though it may be, we are often guilty of missing information that could contribute directly to our success. Now, with that thought in mind, we went out and found an expert on the subject. In the corporate world, he designs and implements a wide range of training programs used by a number of Fortune 500 companies and corporations. One of his programs is effective listening. Why is it so hard to listen effectively?
Well, I think it's hard because there's so many things going on around us, and we have things inside of us, meaning our experiences, our gender even, and a variety of different skills that, that we don't have. And so what happens is we get caught up in a situation where we're not able to process the information well, and therefore we start losing things off to the sides.
Okay, it's often said that some folks hear only what they want to hear. Is that true?
Selective listening, sure. And sometimes it's intentional and sometimes not intentional. Probably the most often is not intentional.
Why is it important to learn to listen? What's important about that?
Oh boy. Well, if anybody has a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whichever gender you are, you obviously know that one. But in the working world, critical, because so many times out there you'll get some instructions or you'll get some sort of idea that's conveyed to you, and if your mind is off on something else, even for a moment of that, you may get it completely wrong, and then you're either sitting in the boss's office or you're wondering what just went wrong, and you may not even know that you didn't hear things correctly.
All right, in reading your material, you're saying there that there are 3 filters that create a problem for folks. Can you tell us what they are?
Well, actually, there's 3 families of filters. Okay. The first family of filters would be the cultural filters that we have, and that's anything from what country we grew up in, what race we belong to, what religion we belong to, where we live within a country. I mean, look at the United States. We have so many different regional cultural differences, and even age. So that's really the bottom line for that.
It could almost also even be the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, sure.
In a place like New York.
Oh, yeah, really. And especially if it's anywhere near ground zero, it's changed dramatically very recently.
My goodness, yes.
Now, there's also the gender filters, which, men and women, let's face it, we hear things differently. We just absolutely hear things differently. And then finally, your own life's experiences, whether that's what's happening in your life now or on the big scale.
Let me just stop you for a minute.
Sure.
Why do we hear things differently? Why, just because one's a man and the other one's a woman, why do we hear it differently? How can you explain that?
Sure. Let's say with the genders, for example. Well, one of the things I would say is look at Dr. Gray's book. Men are from Mars, men are from Venus. Now, I've heard alternatives. There's men are from GM and women are from Ford or something like that. But, but anyway, the thing is we do really look at things differently. And maybe a lot of that goes back to our roles in life. For example, with mothers, you might need to be a better listener to children, and you have to develop those skills early on. That's not to say that men aren't raisers of children, but women tend to focus in on that a lot more. So that can also then transfer into their professional lives and their social lives. So we hear things from different perspectives. Men tend to be a lot more detail-oriented, for example. Women tend to be a lot more holistic-oriented. So those are some variations from a gender perspective. From a life's experience, each one of us are unique. We're individuals. It's like each of our lives is like a fingerprint. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And so that's why each person, the old story, you could be standing on a corner and 4 people can see an accident and see it differently. And that's because of these same filters. The things that you come equipped with that somebody may have very similar, but some of the stuff's very different.
It would seem to me that a personal experience filter would be the hardest to overcome. Would that be true?
Well, I would have to say maybe, because if you go to the cultural filters, you might be looking at a national filter. Well, you know, that's how your whole country reacts, and if you're dealing with people from another country, we've been dealing with this a lot recently, as you all know. I mean, we've been dealing with the whole Middle Eastern mixing now, and people are starting to learn about this. And so, depending on the cultures that you deal with, to the life expectancies, some of those things are very easy to change, some of them are very difficult to change. Let me give you an example of trauma. Any of you who have been in a very bad car accident, you'll know what I'm talking about. It may take a whole lifetime to overcome that. You may never overcome it. You know, people stepping on the gas or the brakes, even though they're sitting in the passenger side, when something adverse happens right in front of you, that's the body's, and that same thing can happen in a conversation or a listening event.
Well then, how do we overcome these filters?
Well, there's actually a lot of ways you can overcome them. Primarily, the most important one, I'd have to tell you, is getting aware of the fact that you're in a situation where you need to be a good listener. That's probably the biggest one that people forget. Gee whiz, here comes an event, whether you're with a boss, a spouse, a friend, whatever. It's like, for those of you who use computers, to open up a program, you have to double-click on the little picture and, you know, up comes the program. Well, you really have to do the same thing in your life. When you're stepping into a situation, especially when it's important to be a good listener, you want to, in essence, double-click what we're talking about right now and create an awareness. Create the fact that, gee, I'm stepping into the situation, I really need to be aware. Okay, that is half the battle right there, because now you're conscious of the fact that you need to be that way.